December 20th, 2025. Well, I guess we're all going to have a Epstein Christmas, huh? The files are finally being released, although I guess not as fast as some Democrats want. Um, I guess when you pass a law that's simply a little bit hard to comply with, it doesn't get complied with because of the simple amount of processing that has to be done to redact legitimate things to protect the victims and so forth. And of course, in the process of this, it's going to be slapdash and mistakes are going to be made. I was looking out the a mainstream, I think it was a CNN article about their assessment of it, and they kind of point this out. But the thing you have to, like in one case, something was redacted, in another case, the corresponding thing was not redacted, and so this looks like more like the issue of mistakes. And the question is, given the time involved to do it was so short, I suspect that and of course, apparently Bill Clinton is starring pretty heavily in the stuff that's been released so far, and it's suspected that perhaps there's a little bit of slant there in the choices being made. I think some pictures involving Trump were already released, and maybe they were released either by the Democrats earlier because there were congressional committees were already releasing some things before this law was passed, and so we'll see. What's going to come of it. Was one document apparently that has a whole list of names, apparently on the list of all the victims that goes on for 7 pages. So that was redacted, the names. But in some cases, some of the other references to them, their lawyers have come out and identified who they were, but because they'd actually filed a complaint with the government, FBI or whatever earlier, and maybe in one case in the mid 90s even. So this is kind of where we're looking at on this subject. And I don't, as I said in the previous video on this, I think this is all going to end up being a lot of nonsense mostly, in that I don't think you're going to actually end up with any real anything that really fundamentally links Trump to any kind of sexual activity with an underage girl that's going to come out of this. I think that's all going to be nonsense. And in fact, in many instances, the other people are coming out. There's a lot of celebrities, Mick Jagger and Michael Jackson, and and other people, are picked in these pictures. But again, I think in many cases these are just meetings. Why all these people want to meet this guy, I don't know. But you have both men and women. What, Diana Ross, I think, was one of them. I mean, so I think this is kind of, this guy apparently was a bit of a socialite, and so people that were in those kind of social circles, particularly in New York and so forth, I think occasionally are going to show up in a picture with a guy. It doesn't mean they're engaged in anything illicit or improper necessarily. That doesn't mean that Epstein himself wasn't doing a lot of improper, but that's a whole different issue. But anyway, we'll see where it goes. Obviously, I think the Democrats are already threatening to sue because everything didn't get released on time, but there's no actual enforcement mechanism in the law itself. So it'll probably just end, but there'll probably be ongoing battles, and things that were now redacted may later be unredacted in order to satisfy various complaints. And I think a lot of this stuff is kind of slapdash. That you sort of see that when you have something of this magnitude. It isn't just like a single document or two. I understand the entire grand jury testimony was redacted, which has annoyed one of the most obnoxious people on X that I occasionally seem to get his posts in my feed. But that's anyway. We'll see what comes of it. I think it's going to be all a big nothing ultimately, and I guess it's a good time to have out during the holiday season for a little Christmas cheer, huh? If you like these videos, please give me a like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. Or you can follow me, of course, on Rumble as an alternative. So that's kind of the way I see that. And of course, on the other hand, I guess we finally got a kind of the lowdown on this Brown shooting. It turns out it was connected to the MIT professor who's expert in fusion physics, I guess, also being assassinated. And it appears basically these people were studied in the same school over in Portugal. They're both, that is, the professor of from MIT and this individual. And then I think that what we have is he also had a vendetta against Brown. I haven't heard all the details there. I kind of got the feeling that he was in a graduate program and probably failed a PhD qualifier or somehow flunked out or something. And apparently his tenure there only lasted about a year. And then he had to go back apparently to Portugal, and then later somehow won the visa lottery and came back in 2017, and that's how he got back in the country. Well, I'm totally opposed to the visa lottery. I don't know. I guess it's just that's a happenstance. This guy got back in, and apparently, when the professor at MIT got an award from the president as Biden for his work in science, this guy probably became incredibly jealous and equally mad at Brown University, and hence led to this mass shooting. And unfortunately, he has committed suicide, and so we won't have to put up with his lengthy trial and all that nonsense. We can say good riddance to him. Obviously, a definite loser, and a loss for the good people that were hurt in this thing. So, but yeah, that's another one of these things. Meanwhile, I guess they're continuing and following up the situation in Australia. And it appears that the two were totally unconnected, that there was nothing anti-Semitic at all. Apparently, wasn't. At least it's not clear that was a motivator at all on the timing here. Although maybe it was. It's still is hard to know exactly what the motivation was. But generally, personal jealousy is considered to be the answer to that one. On other topics, maybe more substantive interest, but it seems like sometimes the more substantive ones don't get the following that the others do. The negotiations are ongoing. I guess I got another round between Ukraine and the United States, and on the other hand, negotiating between the United States and Russia, trying to bring the two sides together on a peace plan. However, I think that Ukraine at this point is not prepared to accept any kind of condition that Russia would accept, and vice versa. And it seems like what may end up happening at the present time is that eventually Russia will have to take the land that they want rather than simply having the Ukraine withdraw from it. And then maybe at that point you could then re-enter the negotiations and come up with a solution. I don't think the amount of land in question is really that much more, really. It's right now the Pot-Ross thing is being held back because there's a group of Ukrainians that are surrounded, and essentially their sacrifice is holding up the Russian advance, because they're not going to be able to advance as long as these people are holding out. Unless the upcoming Ukrainian counterattack is more successful than they expect, they probably won't be able to free them. And it's hard to know, both sides are propagandizing, but once that's resolved, it looks like the Russians may be able to go back on the offensive. There's a place called Kupins where the Ukrainians have launched a fairly successful, apparently, counterattack. It certainly forced the Russians back by stripping troops away from the Sumy region, and that may lead to further Russian advance to the Sumy region. And I'm not sure exactly why the Russians haven't deployed reserves into the Kupins region to deal with it yet. Or have they? It's a little bit up in the air. I mean, there's probably a propaganda line from both sides are probably lying at this point. So, but anyhow, it looks like we're kind of in a logjam on the negotiations, and probably this will have to proceed. Now, meanwhile, the Ukrainians have apparently been launching some attacks on the Russian shadow fleet, and apparently, I think knocked out 3 of them, I believe, in the Black Sea. And also, apparently there's a drone attack on one in the Mediterranean. Now, how that was accomplished, I don't know. I'm guessing they had some kind of a boat or yacht, or probably not a warship, but some kind of a civilian craft that presumably, I don't know how to characterize it, but I don't think we're talking about a naval combatant here. We're probably talking about something that looks like a civilian ship that got in there. Probably a small one, I'm guessing. I don't know. And at any rate, but what they did do, I'm not guessing, is they apparently launched drones from that vessel and then attacked this oil tanker, which presumably it's definitely damaged. I don't think it's sunk, and apparently it already unloaded its oil in India and was coming back, so it probably won't create a big oil slick. I don't know if it's actually on fire or what level of damage there was, or whether it was just attacked and like a harassing attack, but not something that would sink it. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But this could lead to a situation where Russia would be cut off from shipping oil out of the Black Sea area. And also, Turkey has been annoyed at this activity, which also a Turkish flag vessel was destroyed in one of the Russian retaliations. So we'll have to see how that all plays out. And meanwhile, the Russians are launching a bunch of attacks, trying to knock out key rail bridges that would allow transport of equipment and supplies in from Romania into Ukraine, the bulk of central Ukraine, let's say, for presumably this is an area where a lot of logistics for sending military supplies in, as well as commercial goods and so forth, occur. So anyway, that's the way that's going, and we'll have to see, kind of how it ultimately plays out. But that's about it for this time, and I'll be wrapping this up for now, and it'll be posted as always on YouTube and Rumble, and the address of my social media accounts are listed in the description below. All for now.